Hello friends, James Stevenson back with part 1 in my latest Tesla earnings forecast video review series, getting you hyped up, Tesla fans or other interested parties. For the earnings, Tesla will release on January 24th with my forecast for what I think is going to happen, not just in Q4 of 2023, but for every quarter in 2024 and 2025. And I'm joined as always by my co-host Loki, who is curled up in bed sleeping right now. You can keep an eye on him in the Loki cam here below me as I review my 69 tweet forecast thread. It's become a tradition that every quarter I do a 69 tweet thread to post my latest forecast. Normally I do that a couple of months before Tesla reports production and deliveries. This time is the latest I've ever done it after Tesla reported production and deliveries, so I don't have time to do 30 videos about this and release one per day, right? If I'm releasing one video per day on YouTube, I gotta get this nailed in 6 parts or less. So if you're curious why the runtime on this video is so much longer than maybe the videos you've watched in prior quarters, that's why something has to give when you can only make 6 videos. I'm gonna break it up, I have to, differently. In this first video, I'm just going to talk to you about production and deliveries. So I'll show you my charts that are about production or deliveries only, and then I'll skip to the end in the last half of this video and show you the detailed forecast assumptions from my model that are way deeper into the thread, you know, in the 40s of the 69 tweet thread, right? So without further ado, let's jump into my thread, and I'll just talk you through it. Yeah, these are my Tesla charts and my quarterly earnings forecast through 2025. So I'm making the first video right now. You're watching history unfold before your eyes. If I can frame myself correctly. And yeah, so I'll just post these between now and earnings. I don't think I have 10 days anymore. Today is the 15th as I record, so if I can get these uploaded today, maybe I can get one of these published tonight and have enough to get them in before earnings day. So yeah, let's take a look at this first chart here. That looks fine on your screen, I think. If you want to see this bigger or more crisply, I encourage you to use a big screen television. That'll be really helpful when we get to the numbers later on in the section. You don't want to be viewing this video on a phone for the second half of the video, probably, because it's just numbers in a spreadsheet, which are going to be hard for you to see on a phone, right? But yeah, this is my stacked deliveries by model and site chart that I've been tweeting out for a long time. I make this the first chart in the thread because it makes it so easy to see what's going on with Tesla's business, right? Every year they're selling more, even though some quarters they sell less, right? So over a long period of time, the trend is up and to the right. And stuff happens in the real world. The real world is messy and idiosyncratic. So you see these little pullbacks happen from time to time. We didn't get that many of them in 2023. I guess Q3 a little bit. But there's a little bit of seasonality. Q1 is usually weaker than Q4. I'm planning for that to be the case next year as well. Yeah, let me just walk you up the chart. So the Fremont Model S is this lowest white section down here with the Fremont Model X right on top of that. These are stacked roughly in chronological order of production start. So Model S first in 2012, Model X next in 2015, Model 3 next in 2017, then Model Y next the end of 2019. I think they were making some Model Ys. Shanghai Model 3 next, Shanghai Model Y. Small robotaxi doesn't come into the picture until late 2025. I don't know what this is going to be yet that Shanghai is going to be producing next after they make Model 3 and Model Y. Probably the next generation platform, but I'll tighten that up as we get more details on it. Berlin Model Ys are next. It's this darker purple section here. The Texas Model Ys are the lighter purple there, which makes this little green wedge over here Berlin Model 3s. We don't know that Berlin wants to make Model 3s next, but we do know Berlin wants to expand production capacity from a meeting that they held yesterday with residents of uh, the local area. I don't want to get the name of the city wrong. Uh, so, uh, Cybertruck, you see on top of that. Yeah, we'll find out later what Berlin wants to make specifically. Maybe they want to make a next generation vehicle platform and just do that in the Texas and the Berlin Model Y. I don't know. But yeah, Texas Model Ys should continue to ramp up production more and more as we go throughout 2024 and 2025. Same with Cybertruck, they're barely making any these days in 2024, but that will ramp up over time and become profitable. I've got, if you can't tell how many this is in 2025, that's about 250,000 Cybertrucks delivered in 2025 is what I'm expecting. All right, so that's the first chart in the thread. We'll keep going, so this video won't be hours and hours long. The next tweet, so tweet 2, I'm going to call them tweets instead of posts probably because old habits die hard. Tesla will break all previous production and delivery records in 2024 by a wide margin as they've done for many years now. And then they'll do it again in 2025, and 2026, and 2027. The growth story is just getting started. So what's this chart show? This is just the sexy chart showing S3, X, and Y models in total globally. So in the previous chart, we saw them by site, and in this one, we are lumping together the Model Ys produced at 4 locations globally, and the Model 3s produced at 2 locations, Fremont and Shanghai. S and X have only ever been made at Fremont, where they are exported to the rest of the world. So, yeah, check out this chart. It's another up and to the right trend. You don't see a lot of growth in my forecast for the S3 and X portion of this, but there is some here, right? This blue line is not as high as these are. So a little bit of Model 3 growth maybe in the future, but a lot of Model Y growth, as this is the #1 selling vehicle in the world and will continue to be the case as more people get a chance to drive one and find out it's a pretty great car. Pretty great mid-size premium SUV. All right, tweet 3 from this thread. Let's keep narrowing this down some to just the Model 3 and Y. I called them the 2 best-selling luxury vehicles in the world. Maybe it's better to use the word premium than luxury. I don't know. Leave me your thoughts in the comments below if you have thoughts about whether there's a difference between using the word premium and using the word luxury. I've looked up the definition for the word luxury vehicle before, and there is not a very clearly defined definition for whether a Tesla is a luxury vehicle or not, but among the features of luxury vehicles are enhanced technology and enhanced performance, driving performance. So do with that what you will. There are many official publications that consider Teslas to be luxury vehicles and include them in that category. So I think I'm fine calling them luxury vehicles, but if you disagree stridently, let me know in the comments below. Model 3 sales are still growing, but not by as much as Model Y, which continues ramping up at both of Tesla's newest factories, Austin and Berlin. Just another way of seeing it, yes, there is Model 3 growth here. If Model 3 is currently selling at this level, then these blue bars are going higher every year. Why do they look aquamarine? Because they're right next to yellow, and that's the trick that your brain plays on you. They're still the same blue as this blue up here. It's just when you juxtapose them with yellows, they look like they've become a greenish color. And you can see the Model Ys have been growing quite a lot And I expect them to continue to grow from here, from about 300,000 Model Ys delivered per quarter, growing to, a little over 400,000 Model Ys sold per quarter in 2025, something like that. A forecast is not a promise. I'm not guaranteeing that these numbers are going to happen. I'm just sharing with you my expectations for what I think is going to happen. For the fourth post of this thread, I said Tesla is ending the wave of deliveries when the solid red line, production, is above the dotted white line, deliveries. Tesla's strategy is working. Inventory, including test drive cars, rises. Pace of global deliveries gets smoother, cost per delivery improves. Yeah, it's not good when people come into your dealership or your Tesla showroom, sales and service center, and say, hey, I would like to test drive one of your cars. And you, as the Tesla sales center representative, have to say, I'm sorry, we don't have any cars that you can test drive. Because what's that person going to do? They're going to turn around and leave without trying a Tesla. That if you had had a Tesla for them to try, they would have test driven and said, oh, I'm going to buy this car. This is great. I can't believe the acceleration, the performance, the turning, the whatever, the technology inside this car. Maybe they stick around long enough to hear about the safety, etc. Get some of their EV myths cleared from their minds. If you have vehicles available to test drive, probably you'll sell more cars than if you don't have vehicles available to test drive. So, yeah, evens out the pace of global deliveries. You don't have to cram in a bunch of deliveries in the last week of every quarter to try to get them all sold, so they're not in inventory at the end of the quarter. And that helps improve your cost per delivery because you're not paying extra. You're not paying extra overtime at the end of the quarter to people. You're not having to pay expedited freight for delivery, right? You're not paying truck drivers overtime for car carriers to get to their owners to take delivery before the end of the quarter, stuff like that. So you can see these red lines higher than these white dotted lines mean Tesla is successfully ending the wave of deliveries, and I have another chart I can show you that'll maybe do a better job showing you what I mean. Then for post number 5 in this thread, I said here's a handy resource you can show the Tesla haters, skeptics, and trolls who tell everyone the growth story is over. Tesla keeps breaking all-time quarterly delivery records, but that never stops them from predicting that a demand cliff is coming since 2017. What are we looking at here? Well, it's all the quarters that we have the actual global deliveries from. You can see we've got a pretty solid up and to the right trend, but at all points in time during this process, the haters were saying the growth story is over. Tesla is doomed. There's a demand cliff coming. Tesla has peaked. No more growth. All those things were being said all the time across here. And anytime there was a down quarter, it was, aha, there's the proof. Tesla's doomed. Nobody wants to buy these anymore. I mean, this was right before this quarter got reported was the lowest Tesla stock has traded in the past 5 years. Because people saw this downward trend and projected it forward and said, well, 90,000 was the most Tesla can sell in a quarter because they only sold 63,000 in Q1 of 2019. So it's all downhill from here. And then they've sold more than this many every single quarter since, with many, many all-time records reported for global deliveries since. Not this quarter. And not this quarter, Q3 of 2023, but all the other quarters have been all-time records for any quarter, which is pretty good. What did I note over here on the side? I put a forecast box with a dashed box around it, and I noted attention Tesla Q. Please fill in your forecast here, inside this box. You can't go higher than this. It's not going to keep going up and to the right. You know it's going to come back down again, right? So why don't you tell me, what's your forecast for 2024? How much is it going to come down by, Tesla Q? They always think it's going to come down. Okay, I hit that point enough. I'm going to skip this one and move down to tweet 12 because these don't talk about production or deliveries. They talk about other topics. I put them in this order for a reason, but maybe I'll move this one, tweet 12, up to, tweet 6 or whatever the next time I do this, if I decide this is a good format for my videos. So here's that other chart that I promised you, illustrating how ending the wave affects Tesla's quarterly finished goods inventory level. So I have made a bunch of videos about ending the wave before, and I just spoke about it briefly. But this chart is a different way of thinking about beginning inventory, which are these blue blocks here on the left for each of the quarters. Then the production is the orange block that sits on top of the blue block. So here's the amount Tesla produced sitting on top of the beginning inventory. Then the green bar, the deliveries, is to the right of the orange block and is either going to be taller than or shorter than the orange block. Either you're going to deliver more than you produce or you're going to produce more than you deliver, right? And what's the green block sitting on top of? It's sitting on top of the ending inventory. This is how the relationship between these four things works. If you know what any three of the four are, you can solve for the fourth one. So the formula for theoretical ending inventory is beginning inventory plus production minus deliveries. That ought to be how many you have in your ending inventory. If you don't have that many in your ending inventory, something was done wrong. Either this count was wrong, or the production count was wrong. That shouldn't be wrong. Or the deliveries count was wrong. That also shouldn't be wrong. Or there's vehicles missing from your inventory. Maybe people are stealing cars off your lot, right? Just walking you through how the inventory accounting checks work, right? So what do we see happening since Tesla said they were ending the wave at the end of 2022? Well, these blue and pink bars have been rising, which was the point of ending the wave. You want to do that. Why? Because the more you produce and the more you deliver, the harder it gets to be able to sell all of them, or nearly all of them, before the end of the quarter, right? If you're producing 20 cars per day, it's very easy for you to get almost everything delivered by the end of the quarter, right? You shouldn't have thousands of vehicles in your inventory if you're only making 20 per day, right? You ought to have a really small number. But if you're making 10,000 cars per day, it's exceedingly difficult for you to deliver everything you've produced that quarter by the end of the quarter, because on the last day of the quarter, you made 10,000 more. How are you going to get all of those to their delivery, to their owners, let alone all the ones you made earlier in the quarter, right? Well, Tesla was, as you can see in 2022, Q1 and Q2, killing themselves trying to get this inventory to be as low as possible at the end of the quarter. And that's not a healthy relationship for this to be. What you want is for these numbers to be a little less than a third of the production or deliveries. So about a quarter of the stack is how much you want the production and deliveries to be. That's a healthy amount of inventory to have left, which is, less than 30 days of supply. Most competitors, most other automakers have put out, have sold enough vehicles to dealerships that those dealerships have way more than 30 days of supply on hand. I did a video recently about that you can check out. I'm trying to remember the specifics behind that video so I can guide you to it. I make so many videos I forget which ones had what in them, but I remember talking about it. Car dealership guy put out a tweet about this. And then I put out some charts about US car sales. So go check those out. All right, that was the last chart that I wanted to talk about. The rest of the charts are not about production and deliveries. They're about other topics like revenue, cost of sales, etc. So energy, whatever. So what I'm going to do next is scroll to the detail at the end of my thread where I show you the assumptions that I made that build up to all the numbers that we just saw on charts. So I'm going to scroll down to tweet number maybe 42 or so. It's hard for me to remember which tweet number goes with which. So after you get through the first 29, you have to hit the show replies button to see the rest, which is pretty funny. Okay. Oh, it's a little bit later than that. Okay, it's tweet number 44. Which I captioned, here's where my detailed forecast model begins. Stage 1, forecasting weekly production capacity, efficiency, weeks of production, and ending inventory to estimate production and delivery numbers for each model produced at each site in each quarter. That's a lot of detail. And it sounds complicated when I say it this way, but that's as succinctly as I can put it, I think. Maybe I'll just show you what's on the spreadsheet, and it'll make more sense to you that way. So we'll start stage 1 at Fremont, Tesla's oldest final assembly location. And we'll start with the Fremont Model S, which is the oldest model still in production for Tesla. And I'll show you what the maximum weekly production capacity is. I think Tesla can't make more than 1,000 Model S vehicles per week. If they had to, could they? Probably, but I don't think they have been making more than that many per week. So if you assume that there are 13 weeks of production per quarter, which is a pretty good assumption unless the factory is closed for some good reason, then all you need to know is at what production efficiency percentage is Tesla producing Model S's at that factory in order to forecast the production number for that vehicle at that site, right? So I think throughout most of 2023, well, in the first half of 2023, I think they were producing at about 72% production efficiency. When we got the Q3 numbers, we saw much lower than typical production numbers for S and X, which should have been a harbinger that they would be lowering their prices by a lot in Q4, which happened. So about 50% is what I think happened in Q3. So about 6,500 Model S vehicles produced that quarter. If you figure 1,000 vehicles per week times 13 weeks times 50% production capacity, that's how I get to my round estimate of 6,500. And then we know from Tesla's report that Model S and X combined were 13,688. I don't remember the number, but I can do the math. 6,500 plus 7,168 would make 13,168. 668. If I did my math right. Yeah. Maybe I'm not reading that number right. Maybe it's too small for me to read, even though I'm looking at a 4K display. Maybe that's 88 instead of 68. Not the point. The point is, once you have that production number, if you know what your ending inventory was the prior quarter, that ending inventory from last quarter becomes the beginning inventory for this quarter. Hopefully that makes sense. Whatever the count was at the end of last quarter is the count that you start this quarter with. So if you add those two numbers together, that gives you the total goods available for sale. You have the stuff you started the quarter already having in an inventory, plus the stuff you created during that quarter, your production. And then there has to be an ending inventory amount, right? At the end of the quarter, you still have some in inventory that haven't been delivered to buyers. So if you know what those are, and if you have a good forecast in for these, then that's how you get to your vehicle deliveries number. We also know what the production and deliveries were for Q4 because they've been reported already for Q4 of 2023. So it was more like 18,000 of production and 22,800. Yeah, worth of deliveries for Model S and X combined. Here's how I have broken those out separately. Probably Tesla is selling more X than S, based on registration data, so that's how I'm forecasting it. Then you can also see on here how many of those are subject to lease accounting. This number has been coming down. Tesla doesn't report the count, but they do report the percentage. So you can use that percentage to guess at how many of them you think were leased. That becomes important later when you're trying to figure out, all right, how much revenue is there? Because people who buy the vehicle outright are paying you the full amount for the vehicle they ordered. But the people who are leasing vehicles are only ever going to pay you about 60% of the amount of that vehicle, because after 3 years, they're going to give it back to you. And then you'll have a used vehicle you can sell to recoup the rest of the 40% that you didn't get from them over the 3-year life of their lease payments. All right, so you get how that works. That's Model 3, that's Model X. Sorry, that's Model S, that's Model X. Here's Model 3. Model 3 is next. I still have an old production capacity number in here for Model 3. Fremont has repurposed some of the capacity that was once for Model 3 to make more Model Ys. And that's why these percentages look low. Instead of docking the production capacity of 8,500, I decided to stand on principle and say, no, if Fremont wanted, they could be making 8,500 Model 3s per week. They have just decided they don't want to be making that many Model 3s because the market demands more Model Ys. So that's why these percentages are a lot lower. 63, 54, 48, 47% is what I have in for Q4, making about 52,000 Fremont Model 3s produced, with a pretty low inventory count here. I think they're getting most of these delivered domestically, making 52,325 deliveries for Model 3. Then you can see Model Y on here as well. I've got that at about a 6,000 capacity, but at a much higher production efficiency number, about 90%. I've got it at 95% for Q4. So 74,100 Model Ys produced in Q4 is what I expect, with 70,318 deliveries on those. All right, let's move on to the next tweet. Here's the end of the Fremont section, the start of the Shanghai section. Maybe we'll see some new Roadster production in 2025. It could be. I've seen rumors. They have to make it sometime, folks. They could start making Fremont Roadsters, I think, whenever they want, with pretty short notice. But it's never been a priority because it's dessert. Tesla has a lot more important stuff to be working on than the Fremont Roadster. I know it doesn't make Ryan McCaffrey or Andy Sly or anybody else who won a free referral Roadster happy when I say Tesla has more important stuff to do than make them their free sports cars. But it's true. Elon has said it a lot. They know it. They may not want to hear me say it again, but they know the Roadster, the next generation Roadster, is not the most important thing Tesla could be doing. Spending their limited engineering talent time on. But I do have production beginning in 2025, Q1. Maybe it'll happen earlier, maybe it'll happen later. It's not going to move the needle a lot either way. So maybe they'll deliver 15 of those in Q1 of 2025. That's what's currently sitting in my forecast. Maybe about 100 in Q2, 200 in Q3, 400 in Q4. I don't know if there's demand globally for that many folks to drop $200,000, $250,000 on Fremont Roadsters. Probably there is, but they're not going to be producing many, many thousands of Fremont Roadsters per quarter. Probably, if you look at the sales of Plaid, Model S, and Model X, that ought to give you some indication that these are not going to be mass market vehicles. Okay. On to Shanghai. So what do we think for Shanghai Model 3s? Well, throughout 2023, we saw 70,000, 80,000, 60,000. I've got 90,000 in for the production for Q4. I think Model 3, the revamped new Model 3, I'm trying to not call it Highland Model 3 because Elon said that was never a thing. That was a fake code name that got out and caught on. Everybody liked to say Highland Model 3. They did make a new Model 3. They just internally weren't calling it Highland, I guess. But then on the deliveries line here, you see, a little more, a little less some quarters. I've got less than the amount produced being delivered in Q4, accounting for a bunch of these being on the ocean still at the end of the quarter in Q4 on roll-on, roll-off ships, ro-ros, on their way to their destinations. This is part of what ending the wave means. It means that for your production location that's supplying exports to the world, you shouldn't care how much is on the water, as they say, heading to foreign ports to be received and then sold. You should just try to smooth out your production and logistics to maximize the return on investment that you're making getting those cars shipped to their buyers. Try and keep that cost as low as possible. Optimize for lowering the cost per delivery to as low as you can get it, and then don't worry about the timing of in what quarter those sales fall. You'll get it sooner or later. All right, so that's the Model 3. Model Y, much bigger production numbers, much bigger delivery numbers in 2023, about 150,000, 160,000 being made per quarter, with deliveries of, I've got this over 170,000 because the inventory was so high to begin with that quarter. So that's what I've got in for my forecast for Model Y. I do have a placeholder in here for a small slash robotaxi, which is what Tesla called it once in one of their presentations. I think the Battery Day presentation. They said they were going to make a small robotaxi. I think internally they've been calling the next generation vehicle platform the robotaxi platform. And it would make sense to me that Shanghai would be one of the places that makes this next generation vehicle. They're going to make them in Austin too. I don't know which place they would make them first. Probably Austin. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to have to revisit my forecast when that happens. But I do have just a placeholder in here with some funny Easter eggs in here. There's an 11, a 69, and a 420 if you're looking carefully. It doesn't matter. It's very low production. And probably I'm going to get the timing wrong on it anyhow. So it really, really doesn't matter. Here's the next tweet about production and deliveries. It's tweet number 46 for my 69 tweet thread, showing the Model Y production from Berlin and Austin. I said Gigafactory 4 announced expansion plans this morning, but no details yet on what they're planning to produce. I'm still assuming it's Model 3, but I'm happy to change it to whatever Tesla announces. So here's the Berlin section. You can see the first section is the one for Model 3. Tesla has never said they're going to make Model 3 in Berlin, but I've been assuming for many, many quarters now that they will eventually. This next line is the Berlin Model Y section of my model. You can see their capacity has been ramping up, I think, in this forecast to being able to produce about 7,500 Model Ys per week, but I only have 11 production weeks for them in Q4 at about 65% capacity. Now that I'm looking at this number probably isn't going to get hit because of the Gaza situation with the Red Sea being closed. They're not going to hit 13 weeks at 68% capacity in Q1. So bit of a bogey in my forecast here. Probably Berlin is not going to hit that number. But you can see that I've got them producing about 53,000 in Q4 and delivering about 44,000. Again, these numbers are correct in total because Tesla has reported them already, but what we don't know is the mix of exactly how many were produced at each site and for each model, because Tesla is grouping them into Model 3 and Y and others. Not very helpful for people like me, Troy Test-like, others who do very detailed forecasting. We would love to know, at least eventually, how we did on these forecasts. Were we close? Were we way off? We never know because Tesla never publishes the detailed numbers. That would be nice. And then at the bottom, you see the Texas Model Y production here. So 36,000 is how many I'm assuming Tesla produced in Q4 at a 50% production efficiency on 6,000 capacity per week over a 12-week time period. That's how you get to 36,000. And then if there was a very low ending inventory number indeed, they could have delivered a little more than that. All right. Next is post number 47. This is the last of the Giga Texas section and the start of the totals section. If you're looking for even more Easter eggs for Cybertruck, I left a few here, since it doesn't matter much at low volume, and Tesla apparently doesn't want to give us Cybertruck info separately anyway, with an angry face emoji from me. Come on, Tesla team, give us more information than Model 3/Y and others. That's not helpful. All right, so Cybertruck here. I had at a 1% production efficiency rate on a maximum theoretical production output of 1,000 over a 7-week period. So that's how you get to 70 Cybertrucks produced, with 1 in ending inventory, leaving 69 vehicle deliveries in Q4. That's my number, and I'm sticking to it. I think Tesla delivered 69 Cybertrucks in Q4. How many will they deliver in Q1? I've got 420 in here with an ending inventory of 69. And then the following quarter, Q2, I've got a beginning inventory of 69, which makes sense. An ending inventory of 420. And any more Easter eggs? No, I'm out. So if by Q2 they're at 20% production efficiency on 2,000 Cybertrucks per week, they'll make about 5,000 Cybertrucks in Q2, and they'll deliver, a little less than that. Probably they'll start having more Cybertruck inventory at the end of each quarter. And that'll continue to be true as we move into the future. 2025 is really the first place where this becomes meaningful to Tesla's overall income statement, right? Look how small these numbers are relative to Tesla's total output. Like, this Q4 number, 30,000 deliveries, would be really meaningful if we were talking about Lucid or Rivian or something. 30,000 vehicles would be a lot for them. But for Tesla, it's very small, right? That's not even 10%. That's maybe not even 5% by the time we get to Q4 of 2024. All right, but in 2025, yeah, about 250,000 Cybertrucks being delivered is my expectation. Supposedly, there are way over 1 million Cybertruck pre-orders. I think a lot of those are going to cancel. I don't know how many or what percentage of them are going to cancel. Some people pre-ordered like 50 Cybertrucks, and they may decide they want to cancel 49 of those and only take delivery of one. In a lot of cases, and if that happens, then the pre-order number will come down a lot. Here's the section for Semi. I do include Semi. Tesla actually excludes it from their production and deliveries report, saying that it is immaterial. The numbers are too small to be reported, so they're not even including Semi in the others line. But here's how many production and deliveries I have in my forecast model for Semi, with all of these going to Pepsi. Maybe these numbers are too high. I know they're looking very small here. But I had them producing and delivering 31 semis in Q4. That's not a lot, but maybe if 4680 cell supply is sufficient, maybe by the end of 2024, they'll be making over 1,000 semis per week if they can get production to ramp up with enough cell supply. All right, so that gets us to our All Sites and Models section. Also, if you're looking to tie my numbers out against what Tesla reported, these are the lines you want to tie out against. Rows 166 and 167 are going to be showing you the production excluding semi and the deliveries excluding semi. Here's where you see the numbers Tesla actually put out. So for example, Q4 2023, 494,989 was the production number, and 484,507 was the deliveries number. That's going to be a little bit different from these numbers because these numbers include 31 semis produced and delivered. Okay, so that's that section. Do I have one more here I can show you in my production and deliveries video, part 1? Yes. Here are the production and delivery subtotals for each production site. I include semi with Texas, even though it's not made in Texas yet. Maybe they will move production to Texas. But Tesla doesn't include semi-production or delivery numbers in their totals at all. I count them, which explains any quarters you can't tie to what Tesla reported. But here is production and deliveries by site: Fremont, Shanghai, Berlin, and Texas. So which one is making the most? It's Shanghai, and by a lot. Who's in second place? It's Fremont. Third place, I think, is Berlin, and fourth place, I think, is Texas. Though the day we were there for the Cybertruck delivery event, first deliveries event, Model Y production was still moving. Like, we didn't get to walk the Model Y line, but we could see it from where the beginning of our tour started, because the Model Y line is right next to the Cybertruck production line. They come pretty close to each other. Even though it's an enormous building, there's not a lot of space in between those two lines. So I've got production for all four of these locations ramping up in 2024 and 2025. You can see the numbers on the page here. And that's how we got to all those charts that we reviewed early in the video. And that's the end of part 1, because in part 2, I'll talk about revenue. So stay tuned for part 2, where you'll get to hear about revenue. If you're so anxious you can't wait to watch that video, you could subscribe to me on Twitter and get instant access to all the videos that I've uploaded already, instead of having to wait for me to make these public on YouTube or tweet them out publicly on Twitter. And with that, I'll check back in with Loki and see that he is still curled up and sleeping. Before I outro and say thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, don't forget to click the like button if you liked this video, and don't forget to subscribe to me. You can do that for free on YouTube if you're watching me on YouTube. I'll leave you a link over here. Or as I just mentioned, you can subscribe to me on Twitter, X, or on Patreon if you would rather subscribe there, or by joining my YouTube channel if you would rather do that, as my executive producers Kathy Kitchler and Rebellionaire.com did, and I'll see you in the next one.